Chapter 31. Nick Anderson waited and saw. Seeing that her feet were swollen, he said unhappily, "As a woman, you don't even know how to wear high heels, is that even right? As a man, you kiss women you don't know very well for no reason, and twice a night, is that even right?" William Walton looked at her with a dangerous glint in his eyes. "We're not familiar with each other? Otherwise, do we know each other very well?" Remembering that they were alone in the car, she felt somehow cowardly. "Among all the men in this world, other than your father, is there anyone else who is more familiar with you than me? You have to know, I'm the first man to penetrate deep into your soul." Before he could finish, she instinctively covered his mouth with her hand. The moment she placed her hand on his lips, she felt some regret. Embarrassed, she retracted her hand. "We agreed to never mention that matter again." "No one wants to mention it. I'm only reminding you how familiar I am with you." She looked embarrassed again. "A woman whose name you don't even know. If you were to say that you are familiar with it, don't you feel guilty?" "Laura Green." "Yes," she answered instinctively and was surprised that he knew her name. "Where did you get your confidence from? Do you think I wouldn't know?" "Because you never called me by my name." "Miss Green, this is my honorific title for you, but that doesn't mean I don't know your name." "But you've never asked for my name. How would you know?" "Right, I forgot. You saw our principal yesterday, she told you. When you came to my house to take up your position, I saw your resume, so I won't forget it." She was speechless. There were people boasting about themselves everywhere. There weren't many who could do as they pleased like him. How much self-confidence did he have to praise himself for having a good memory just because of a single name? She curled her lips in disdain. Mr. Carter came back and got into the car. William Walton said, "Let's go to the hospital." "Yes, Mr. Walton." Laura Green was about to say something when she heard William Walton say, "It's useless if you object." She didn't want to object, she just wanted to say thank you. After all, the ankle pain was real. "What did Nick Anderson tell you just now? I told you to come down and get so angry." She was silent, almost forgetting about her brother. "Why aren't you talking?" He looked at her. "I don't want to talk about it." "Does he dislike you kissing me?" Laura Green glanced at Mr. Carter in embarrassment and turned to glare at him. William Walton acted like nothing happened and said, "What's your relationship with him?" After a moment of silence, she looked at him. "As long as Benjamin finishes his college entrance exam, Mr. Walton and I will not have anything to do with each other anymore. So please don't get involved with me in the future, and don't get too close to me either. And what you did to me tonight, I will forget about all these nonsense. I hope Mr. Walton won't have a next time too." Hearing her words, William Walton's good mood instantly turned cloudy. This woman stood between him and Nick Anderson and chose Nick Anderson in the end. Very well, the more she was like this, the more he wouldn't easily let her go. After all, he had disliked Nick Anderson for a long time. One day, he wanted her to choose William Walton in front of Nick Anderson. He smiled. He did not believe that he would be unable to subdue this little wild cat with claws. "Nick Anderson, let's wait and see." Chapter 32. My name is Tender. Not for nothing, William Walton carried Laura Green out of the hospital. The doctor said, "After the ankle swelling, you must be careful, because after a twist, it is easy to be twisted again." After applying the medicine, she originally wanted to limp and jump out, but he directly picked her up and brought her out of the hospital in front of everyone's eyes. Laura Green buried her face in William Walton's chest the whole time. It wasn't because he was moved, but because he was afraid of losing face. Returning to Walton family, William Walton then carried her into Butler Tong's bedroom in front of him. William Walton said to Butler Tong, "In the future, get Benjamin to come here and find Miss Green for supplementary lessons. Also, from tomorrow on, arrange for Mr. Carter to pick up Miss Green in the car until her legs are healed." "Mr. Walton, my leg isn't that bad. I don't need to trouble Driver Chen anymore, and you got a sprain because you went to dinner with me. I should be in charge." "Butler Tong, take good care of Miss Green." After he finished speaking, he left her room. Butler Tong said respectfully, "Okay, Mr. Walton." Laura Green truly felt the pressure. The next day, Mr. Carter accompanied her to the school gate. The moment she got off the car, she saw Nick Anderson and his Porsche at the school gate. Many passing students were secretly taking pictures of the Porsche. Nick Anderson ignored them and walked towards Laura Green. Laura Green looked away and took the cane that Driver Chen handed her. "Driver Chen, you can go back first. I'll go in myself." Mr. Carter got on the car and left. Nick Anderson also walked over. Looking at the bandages on her legs, his face was full of worry. "Laura, what happened to your feet?" "I accidentally fell." Her expression was calm. "Does it hurt?" He bent down and was about to check when she turned away. "It doesn't hurt." Seeing how polite she was to him, he stood up and looked at her. "Are you still angry at your big brother?" Laura Green lowered her gaze. "What's there to be angry about?" "All right, Laura, I know. Yesterday I was talking to you in a bad tone, but after you left in such an angry manner, I feel very upset. You are my precious sister, understand?" Seeing his sad expression, Laura Green also felt sad in her heart. After all, in the Anderson family, only Nick Anderson considered himself to be a relative. She was about to say something when her cell phone rang. She took the phone out of her bag and looked at it. It was an unmarked string of familiar yet unfamiliar numbers. She glanced at Nick Anderson, turned around and picked up the phone. Hello. You can find some time to see me today. Mister, you must have called the wrong number. I don't know you. Laura Anderson, he berated her. Do you still have any rules? How dare you speak to me like that? Laura Green clenched her fist. She said, You're wrong. My name is Laura Green. Back then, when my mother wanted to register me as Laura Anderson, Mr. Anderson strongly opposed it, so he hoped that Mr. Anderson could correct your mistake in addressing me. Also, please don't call me again in the future. It will affect my life. Goodbye. After she finished speaking, she directly hung up the phone. Nick Anderson looked at her with a bit of worry. It's Dad, right? I don't have a father. Also, your surname is Anderson, and my surname is Green. Stop saying that I'm your little sister and don't come look for me again. I don't want to have anything to do with you Anderson family people anymore. Chapter 33. I was with another man. Seeing that she was being so stubborn, Nick Anderson knew that she was truly angry. It was useless for him to say anything before she calmed down. He sighed and could only stand there and watch her walking into the school. For the whole day, Laura was listless. Avery Harris heard that she had entered the school using a walking stick. At noon, he searched the entire campus for her, and finally found her at the edge of the stone stairs near the school field, reading a book. From a distance, Avery Harris felt as if he had seen the Laura of the past. These days, they had arranged to meet, and she would always arrive early, studying and waiting for him. To see her, he would always prepare the snacks she liked and rush to her. He caught his breath from running and walked slowly to her and sat down across from her. Hearing the noise, she looked up at him. He was looking at her ankle and frowned. Why were you so careless? He wanted to reach out and touch her foot, but she naturally moved her leg away. Laura Green, let's make up, okay, huh? I don't want to continue like this. Without you, my life has turned into a pool of stagnant water. Let's get married, okay? I swear, I will never betray you again. I will treat you well. For a long time, she remained silent as she looked at his deeply emotional and sorrowful eyes. Avery Harris leaned forward. He kneeled in front of her and held her hands. Laura, don't give me up. Before, you told me that I took 99 steps towards you, so the final step will be taken by you. Now, I am willing to start all over again. All you have to do is stand still and let me walk all the 100 steps, okay? I slept with another man. She looked at him calmly. Don't piss me off like that. Laura, I know you. You wouldn't do that. It's true. On the day that I caught you two, I slept with another man. She laughed. Although I regret using such a method to take revenge on you, at this moment, I feel fortunate because I did not leave any way for myself to return to your side. Therefore, no matter how pitiful your behavior is, I will not be able to turn my head back. Laura Green. Avery Harris gritted her teeth. Don't do that. Avery Harris, ex-couples can't be friends, so I won't bother you, and I also hope that you don't disturb me anymore. Let's keep our dignity. It's better to be a stranger than an enemy, right? You. Suspicion could be seen in Avery Harris's eyes. He did not believe she would do this. However, her expression didn't seem like she was lying. Avery Harris stood up and looked down at her. Did you sleep with someone else? She tensed her grip on the book. Yes. Avery Harris gritted his teeth. I've been with you for so long, yet you won't even let me kiss you, but you end up sleeping with another guy? Laura, you disappoint me a lot. Avery Harris left in anger. Laura Green felt that she had been pushed into the abyss. However, she lowered her eyes and smiled. In any case, she was already at the bottom of the life valley. She left school in the afternoon, on her crutches. When she reached the school gates, she saw Mike stand next to the gate. Just as she was about to go over, she was stopped by a black Audi car that suddenly drove up to the school gates. Two men got out of the car and picked her up. They put her in the car and left. Chapter 34. Always appear in this kind of situation. The more she thought about it, the more upset she was. The one inside was her birth father. He had tied her up. He saw that her feet were injured, but from beginning to end, he had never asked her if she was in pain. She was sad. She hugged herself and buried her face in her knees, tears trickling down uncontrollably. Why did everyone have a home except her? Why other people's father was amiable and doting on their daughters, yet her father treated her as an enemy? Why was she unable to have ordinary and simple happiness? Becoming an illegitimate daughter wasn't her fault. He had made the mistake, but why did she should pay for his mistake? In front of her, someone gently poked her head. She raised her head and looked into William Walton's eyes through her tears. Why did he always appear when she was in a disaster? Their gazes met, and her tears were like a broken necklace, unable to be stopped. She lowered her head and wiped it a few times, but she did not wipe it clean. He took out a handkerchief and handed it to her. She covered her eyes with the handkerchief and said while pressing her eyes, "Why is the wind so strong today? It makes my eyes very dry." The wind is so strong that can't even move the leaves. She was embarrassed for a moment, then raised her head and stared at him, choked with sobs. How can you be so ungentleman? Usually, when a man encounters this kind of situation, he should say, yes, the wind is strong. Yes, I just said that the wind was so strong. Am I wrong? She stood up and bit her lips. You're a strange person. Why are you staring at me like that? I was in a disaster. Aren't you supposed to be very gentle and lend me your shoulders, then turned around? Don't look at me. You can't borrow my shoulders. Do you want me to hug you? She was stunned for a moment. Yes, or not. Before she could react, he pulled her into his arms and embraced her. This way, you won't be able to see you anymore. Keep crying. She was speechless. Shouldn't he say, don't cry? He had never acted like others. However, his embrace was so warm, seemed to warm her heart up. On the way, a red sports car passed by. When the people in the car saw this, she was so shocked that she almost braked in the middle of the street. That bitch, Laura Green, how could she be together with Mr. Walton? The red car returned to the Anderson residence. Betty Anderson got off the car and quickly ran home. Seeing John Anderson sitting in the courtyard, she ran over and exclaimed, Dad, I just saw that bitch's daughter. Do you know who she's with? John Anderson said coldly, Betty, how many times have I told you that it's your sister? Pfft, I don't have such a sister. Dad, don't even think about making me acknowledge her, otherwise I won't even recognize you. Enough, stop talking. John Anderson was already annoyed. Who is she with? Mr. Walton. The two of them were cuddling up by the side of the road. This bitch must be crazy to mess up with Mr. Walton. Betty Anderson was unhappy because Mr. Walton was the dream of all women in this city. How could he be caught by Laura Green? She couldn't accept that. John Anderson's expression did not look very good either. This girl, is she planning to go against him? He didn't believe that he couldn't control a little girl like her. William Walton brought Laura back to his house. Benjamin was in his living room. Seeing his brother carrying Laura Green back, his eyes almost popped out of shock. Sending her back to her room, Benjamin Walton followed her in. William Walton replied, You have to be quick to ask all your questions. After that, go back earlier. She needs to rest. Okay. William Walton looked at her, then turned to leave. Benjamin Walton closed the door and said while grinning, Miss Green, why are your eyes so red? What did my brother do to you? She said embarrassedly, Don't speak nonsense. Mr. Walton saw that I have met with some trouble, and so he helped me out. Take out your textbooks and start study now. Benjamin Walton smirked. Would his brother help others? He didn't believe it. On the second floor, William Walton called the secretary. Investigate the recent activities of the Anderson family. Also, investigate Laura Green, and bring all the information to my office tomorrow. Chapter 35. The appearance of hardworking is charming. It was 11:30 when William Walton finished his work and went to the window to smoke. When he looked down, he saw that the lawn outside Laura's room was illuminated by the light from her room. He twisted his head to look at the clock on the wall. It was so late. Or, had Benjamin not left yet? Hesitating, he put out the cigarette and went downstairs to the door of her room. He knocked on the door. No one answered. He put his hand on the doorknob and gave it a push. The door was unlocked. He looked into the room and saw that Benjamin was not there. Instead, she was lying on the bed with her headphones on, one hand holding the book, the other holding the pen, nibbling on the tip of the pen while she wrote something in the book. The hair at the side of her forehead, along with her Laura Green movements, would occasionally flutter around her ears. He smiled charmingly. This girl who was seriously reading a book was truly very beautiful. She did not notice him as he entered the room. When he reached the bed, he looked down at her textbook. She was solving a difficult math question. He stood there for 2 minutes and she finally finished. She pursed her lips into a smile, rolled over, and was about to stretch when she saw a person standing next to the bed. Before she could see who he was, she let out a sharp cry and quickly flipped over to the other side of the bed. It looked like she was about to fall under the bed. William Walton jumped onto the bed quickly and grabbed her. She took a deep breath and put half of her head in his arms. She looked at him and said, You? Why are you here? William Walton twisted his head and laughed. This is your catchphrase indeed. His handsome appearance caused her heart to tremble. Thinking about it this way, last time she had been drunk and pounced on him. It hadn't been a loss. After all, he didn't only have money and he was also good-looking. She had earned it. Did I scare you? She stopped thinking about other things and hurriedly sat upright. She moved closer to the bed and took off the headphones in her ears. It's the middle of the night and there's someone suddenly standing by the head of the bed. How can I not be scared? She said with furrowed brows. Mr. Walton, do you not even knock on the door when you enter other people's room? I did. You didn't hear it. She picked up her earphones and held it for a moment. I was listening to French, so I didn't hear anything. He raised his eyebrows. Listening to French and doing math? You are a weirdo. Can't you be distracted? Yes, but in real life, who can concentrate on one thing without being disturbed? So, you are deliberately training yourself to do two things at the same time. She did not answer, but instead asked, Is there something that you want to talk to me about? Nothing. I saw the light in your room and knew that you haven't slept, so I came down to see if Benjamin was still studying. Benjamin left at 9. William Walton picked up her book and flipped through it. They sat on the bed and chatted, making her feel a little awkward. Just as she was thinking about whether she should get off the bed or force him out with the excuse that she needed to rest, he suddenly spoke up. Didn't anyone tell you before? You look very charming when you study. Her face was slightly red. To suddenly get praised in such a manner, she felt a bit. She couldn't bear it. She shook her head. No. Looks like I'm the first. You like science? He turned the pages and glanced at her. She nodded. Yes. The book you bought is a summary of the problems with difficult math questions over the years. There are some questions in this book that even your teacher would find difficult. She scratched her forehead. Mr. Walton, time? Why didn't you do this? He pointed to one of the topics she had vacated. She looked at it and shrugged. I can't solve this problem. I can. Do you want me to teach you? She nodded repeatedly. William Walton patted the seat beside him. Come here. She spun around and sat next to him. He placed the book on his lap, picked up the pen she had been nibbling on, and began to teach her how to solve it. William Walton only used a few minutes to explain to her a way to solve the problem. She was suddenly enlightened. He handed her the pen. Then finish it by yourself. She sat upright and took the book and pen. Following what he taught her, she got an answer soon. She gave a joyful smile and turned to look at him. Mr. Walton, you are so good at math. William Walton proudly raised his brows. Being able to do 80% of the questions on this book, you are good enough. She pouted. Why do I feel like Mr. Walton is indirectly praising yourself? He proudly said, I have the qualifications. If you have anything that you don't know, you can ask me. Then, can you explain this to me? William Walton looked at it and quickly explained his thoughts to her. He taught earnestly, and she listened earnestly. Early in the morning, her alarm clock rang. She was in a daze from sleep. She wanted to turn around and find her phone, but she found that someone had wrapped around her waist. Behind her, a warm body was sticking close to her. Her mind buzzed as she realized something. At this time, William Walton's voice sounded behind his head. Why you didn't turn off the alarm clock? It's noisy. She sat up and turned around to look at him. William Walton gazed at her face lazily. Good morning. Morning. Good morning. She blushed and avoided looking at him. She was crazy. Last night, after he had taught her the last question, she finished it and wanted to show the results to him, only to find that he had fallen asleep in her bed. She looked at him and thought that he looked strangely handsome when he slept. She thought that God was so unfair that gave a beautiful person everything. Otherwise, how could he be so handsome even he was sleeping? She had meant to wake him up and let him go back after a few furtive glances. But somehow, she had fallen asleep too. She had no idea why they kept such a position at the foot of the bed. William Walton pointed to her phone. She rushed over, picked up her cell phone, and turned off the alarm. He sat up and stretched. This is my first time falling asleep while studying. It seems that your enthusiasm towards studies is very contagious. She scratched her eyebrows. About that? Last night? Oh, thank you. He smiled and got down from the bed. He said as he walked towards the door, if it wasn't me, then you would have fallen to the ground. So, I will accept your thanks. She blushed a little as he opened the door and went out. That wasn't what she wanted to thank him for. The butler and others were so shocked when they saw William Walton left Laura's room. Everyone hurriedly greeted him, and William Walton said in an extremely good mood, Go and do your work. He went upstairs. He woke up in the middle of the night and saw her sleeping at the foot of the bed like a meek cat. He wanted to carry her back to the bed, but she rolled over to the end of the bed. Immediately, he laid at the end of the bed, blocking her path. She rolled over and snuggled into his arms. He took her in his arms and decided, in that instant, that he wouldn't leave tonight. And for the first time, he found it nice to spend the night in the same bed with a woman.